This is Josh, or High Delirium, and this is my Obsessed with Words video. I'm going to talk to you briefly, I hope, about writing, more specifically why I write, what I write, why I write, what I write, that was wordy, how I write, and just generally what I look for in writing, what I enjoy about it in other people's writing. So I guess I should just begin with why I write, and it's essentially a pretty simple explanation. It's not a real psychological demand as to why I write. It's more to do with when I read a piece of poetry or a piece of prose that has an impression on me that I enjoy, and it doesn't matter what the impression is, whether or not it's about love and it makes me feel suddenly intoxicated, or whether it's about something dark or macabre and makes me feel sad or upset or disgusted even. As long as it has that impression on me and I enjoy the impression, or it resonates with me in a certain way, then essentially it just makes me want to have write things that have an impression on other people. Now, I will admit, most of the things I write are about love. There are some things that sort of, dip into the darker persuasion of poetry and prose, but I think for the most part, about 99% of my writing is about love. There's a very good reason for that, but I'll get onto that later. And also I like the destruction and construction of words. And when I say destruction, what I mean by that is expressing something extremely complex. Love is not a very simple topic. I think many people might think it's very typical to write about, or very, very bleak to write about, but I don't think it's very simple. I don't think it's simple at all. I think it's very hard to express sometimes what you feel, and to destruct all of those complexities and be able to express it simply, I find is really satisfying and really beautiful, I guess. And in the same time as well, you're also constructing how to express yourself, and I really enjoy doing those things. And it's essentially like bending words to your will, and I find that, again, is really good. I know the Idiot Manifesto said something very similar, and she's totally right. Words are very rigid. Words are very rigid things, and it's through poetry and it's through prose that these rigid things are made malleable, and you can sculpt them into whatever you like, and I think that's a very satisfying feeling. How I write is essentially the same as everyone else. I have a scrapbook, and I have it here, if you can see this. I have this little scrapbook thing that I use as a sort of a journal, and also to write down any poetry or any prose that may hit me during the day, and I'm not near a computer. But even when I am near a computer, I find it really improves the quality of my writing, in my opinion anyway, if I write it down and then develop the idea from there. I find that I get a better end product at the end of it. And I'd recommend that to everyone, is to have some sort of scrapbook. It doesn't have to be some fancy moleskin journal like mine. It can be anything. Even like this sort of thing here is just like a scrap flip pad of paper. As long as you can write on it, it doesn't really matter. But I'd recommend that for everyone. I don't listen to any music when I write. I got this question earlier, and I thought I'd bring it up because a lot of people talk about the benefits of listening to music because it inspires you and stuff like that when you're writing. But I don't listen to any music when I write, because if there's lyrics in it, I find myself just constantly repeating the lyrics in my head. It's like over and over and over, and then I can't write anything. And even if it's an instrumental, I just sit here and I enjoy the song. And then at the end of it, I'm like, yeah, that was a good song, but then I've got nothing written, I've got nothing done, so I try to write in silence, or as silent as is possible. In public places, I tend to zone out from the sounds of cars or other people, you know, and I'm quite happy that I can do that. It makes time pass along faster. Yeah, I write about love. I brought this up briefly when I was on about why I write. Why I write about love specifically. Well, you know, I think like love is very important. I think it's important to put a high value on it, and not to sort of deduct from its, you know, its reason, its definition. I think that happens a lot. You know, even when people are saying like, oh, I love so and so, or I love lasagna or something like that. I think, yeah, okay. I mean, it depends on the context that it's used in, but I think it's a very sort of amazing thing, and I think that you should respect its reason. And I think it's one of the best things to write about. Now, whether or not it's trite and generic, well, I think again that depends on who you're reading and how they write it. I don't think that topics can be overused. I think expressing the topics can be overused, if that makes sense. Like, if you find someone that just, you know, writes about love in a very bleak and mundane way, but then look at Neruda, who writes about love, you know, I don't think that you would say, oh, Neruda's like awful for writing about love, what an awful topic. I think you'd look at the person who's expressed it poorly and think, well, I hate it when people write about love that way, or this, or whatever like that. So yeah, I write about love a lot. Even before I found my three-letter pseudonym, who, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know what I'm on about, or you'll see it in the future if you follow me now. I wrote about love anyway, even though I didn't really have any in my life. I still wrote about it, and the way I've put this before is I used empty pronouns, and what I mean by that is writing about someone who doesn't exist, and essentially just writing she or you know, empty pronouns that are waiting for a name, or pronouns that are waiting for a face. That's essentially what I did for quite some time, but now I found a name for those empty pronouns, and yeah, that name is privileged information though, so I get asked the name or the identity of my three-letter pseudonym, but I shan't be giving that away unless, you know, you're my friend, I guess. Yeah. So I've already talked for like 8 minutes. I can't believe I have. So, yeah. Oh, when I started writing, yeah, I should get onto that. When I was about 12, I was influenced by shitty music. The way I like to put it is shitty music. Now, when I say shitty music, I mean like emo, American emo shit. Yeah. And essentially what I would do is I'd go home and think it was like incredibly cool and, you know, fascinating to be a deep, brooding poet, and I'd sit and I'd think, oh, my life is so awful, I'm going to write a poem. And yeah, I don't think that's the right way to write at all. I think you should write for, you know, a different reason, not to sort of be like, oh, my life's so shit, I want to make people see how shit it is. That is a bullshit reason to write. And so after, when I was about 12, I gave it up for a few years. I may have like dabbled in it, but nothing really serious, until about February this year. I started writing again, and then I decided to make a Tumblr because I was just curious to see what it was. I didn't have any intention of using it as a poetry blog, but I did, and I think that the quality of my writing has improved so dramatically just because of Tumblr, just because of how much I've exposed myself to other people's writing and other people's writing styles, and it's, you know, it's a brilliant place to learn, really. And when I say exposing yourself to other writing improves you, I'm not talking about plagiarism. Generally what I think is important is to imitate. Say, looking at the way Neruda writes, you know, I think personally that is, I love the way he uses his metaphors, And so I'd look at his poetry and I'd think, alright, I really like the way he uses those metaphors. I'll try and use metaphors in a similar way. I wouldn't just take the metaphor and put it in my poem. I think I try to do that similarly. And, you know, without even trying, you've already tweaked his writing style slightly to your own style. Whether or not that's a good or bad tweak, I mean, that's up to whoever reads your poetry, but I think it's very important to read a lot of other people to find your own style, as ironic as that may sound. I guess I'll answer some pretty basic questions that I get quite a lot. How old am I? I'm 17 years old. My name is Josh, as I already clarified, so I don't know why I said that again. Yeah, I live in England, but you've probably figured that out by the whole accent thing. Yeah, oh, and I got an anon earlier today that I don't usually publish anymore because I get them too much. And it was one of my religious anons, and there's two types of religious anon that I get. The first type, and the most frequent type, is people who are trying to save my soul. Now, for the most part, these guys are anons, but there's been a few who invariably have Jesus in their name, who are trying to save my soul. And what I'd say to those guys is, please stop. I'm not interested. I tried Christianity, you know, give it a go. Found it a bit bleak. Yeah, too many rules, really. You know, not enough evidence, all that sort of, you know. Yeah. And the other type is religious people who are interested in debate, and again, most invariably are anons. Again, this blog's a poetry blog. I know it's a personal blog, but it's a writing blog. And if I posted every single religious anon that I got, it would be nothing other than a religious anon blog. But the one I get the most is, why do I feel the need to attack religion so tirelessly? And, well, I'm going to keep this short because, like I said, it's a writing blog, and this is a writing video, essentially. So I'm going to keep this very, very, very short. I think that two things that should be criticised the most in our society are politics and religion, and especially when those two things are combined. And they get combined too much. It's worrying. And, you know, that's why theocracies exist. Because religion, it's too intrusive, and personally I find it ridiculous, and I find it to be abominable in terms of education. I think just because there's a gap in some scientific understanding of, say, you know, many different things, I don't think that justifies someone to write God by default in these gaps. If that makes any sense, it should be. But yeah, that's why I criticise religion so tirelessly. And I will criticise religion, and if you want me to debate religion with you privately, I will most likely criticise your faith. I don't think you should take it personally. But yeah, anyway, this has been my Obsessed with Words video